I'm Rashmi from greytHR and today's moderator of this session. First and foremost, a warm welcome to one and all, and thank you for joining us today in this exclusive session of Parichay, Leave Policies for 2022 and the key parameters to keep in mind. So before we begin, I would like to give you a quick brief on how the session goes. So for the first few minutes, there will be a discussion done on today's topic with the help of our keynote speakers, which is then followed by Q&A. So if you have any questions, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up during the Q&A session and try to get answers from our experts. Also, if you're worried about missing out on any part of our today's session due to some unavoidable reasons, not to worry at all, as we are currently recording this session and the same will be shared with all of you soon. Well, to start with, it does not matter how much your employees love working with you. Sooner or later, they will need a vacation to clear up their head and spend some quality time with family and friends. So it is good for both employees and the company that everyone in the office takes leave once in a while. So framing the right policies that suit your workforce is very important to strike a balance between happy employees and business growth. So leave policies can definitely not be one size fits all and hence have to be very mindfully set by the HR by keeping both the employee and employers in mind. So today we are going to talk about this topic at length with valuable inputs and also we'll have a look at few case studies by our esteemed speakers. But before that, I would now like to introduce our keynote speakers and would like to start with Ms. Maneesha Thakur, HR leader. So Maneesha has over 2 decades of experience in the HR vertical and is a specialist in the BFSI, telecom and IT sectors. She has provided HR leadership roles to business including retail financing, infrastructure financing, microfinance, general insurance and mutual funds. She has led the HR functions for large conglomerates like Edelweiss, LNG Finance, Imami, etc. She holds a postgraduate degree in personal management and industrial relations from XLRI Jamshedpur and is an eminent speaker in various HR forums. So, Ms. Maneesha, we are honored to have you here in our today's session. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Our next speaker is Ms. Suchandra Dutta, HR head, Plum. So to tell you more about Suchandra, she is an alumnus of Haas School of Business, University of Berkeley, with 15 plus years of strategy, consulting, program management, and practitioner experience in the area of human resources. As a senior HR leader, she has led different HR functions with leading global organizations such as AstraZeneca, Novozymes, Alcatel-Lucent. A dynamic leader with experience in working with global cross-functional teams and implementing global projects in HR. So, Ms. Suchandra, it's a pleasure to have you in our today's session. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. Proud to be a part of this esteemed panel today and look forward to the discussions.
Thank you so much. And moving on to our next esteemed speaker, Ms. Soyirindhi Hore, Manager HR Business Partner, Yahoo. So Soyirindhi, with 15 plus years of experience, has worked in various facets of human resource management. She specializes as an HR business partner and has a strong ability to understand key business goals or business strategies and accordingly explore, align, or derive HR solutions or strategies to build organizational capability in support of business strategy. She has been successful in connecting ideas and plans to specific business issues or goals and thus being a trusted people advisor to business managers. So Soyirindhi has previously worked with many reputed organizations like Oracle, Mindtree, Mahindra Satyam. So Soyirindhi, we are delighted to have you in our session today. Welcome again.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. And it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this panel, and I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Sure. So, dear audience, without further delay, I think let's go for our discussion today. So, I have a couple of questions for our speakers today. So, let's hear it from them. So, my first question is to Ms. Maneesha. So, Maneesha, how important it is to have the right leave policies that suit your employees, and how does it impact on recruitment and retention?
Thank you, Rashmi. So after having spent a long amount of time as being the HR person for various organizations, I have moved into working on the strategic decisions for organizations in the medium and large organizations, so that they can transition from where they are to the fast track and see unlimited growth. Now that's something we feel that we have a solution for, which we work with various companies. Now the thing is that when we are looking at a strategic transition of a company from where they are to the next level and moving dynamically, apart from looking at the market and the product, etc., one of the key factors which we look at is the talent strategy of the organization. It's very important in our view that an organization which wants to be a high growth organization will have to have the right talent strategy, because that's how they will be able to attract the best talent. They'll be able to engage them, retain them, and move forward. There is no other way of becoming a high growth organization. So now getting the best talent, engaging them and keeping them, in our view, is all about what we call overwhelmingly as the culture of the organization. Now, culture has lots of elements. It is about how we treat people, what kind of environment do we give them. One part of culture also is what kind of work environment in terms of hours, space, what do we demand from them? What do we convey to them? And we figure that in culture, one differentiator that organizations have is whether there is a trust element. How far do we trust our employees? And trust is very important, which comes up in terms of, if you look at, our current topic, leave. And when I'm talking about leave, I'm talking about, the hours you work, the kind of work you do, and the hours you take off, whether it is about, daily working hours, whether it is about, the weekends, it is about taking a big chunk of leave. So in that context, I think, the discussion on leave is a very, very important discussion for an organization, because it is anchored in the trust that the organization shows to the employee. Why do we provide leave to employees? We provide leave to employees for some very, very mundane but basic requirements, which is that, it could be illness, it could be home responsibilities, it could be taking care of people. And then there are other things which are like, rejuvenating yourself, traveling, having fun, learning. There are a lot of reasons people need leave. Now, if you look at it, today's workforce, which consists of a large number of millennials, it's not only about life requirements, it's also about having the ability to take time off work and devote themselves to other things, interests, rejuvenate themselves through interests and then come back to work. So that's the reason why employees want to take time off. Now let's look at the converse of that. Why would an organization want to give leave? If it's a transactional relationship, the dynamic tension will always be you work more, take less, or vice versa. So an organization should always want to take more, but that's not the case. Because if you are an organization which is looking towards high growth and sustenance, you want to give employees a leave policy which takes care of them. Because at the end of the day, here talent is not a pair of hands. It's also not a person who comes in and focuses on a defined process and says, okay, ye ho gaya, and I'm done and I'm gone. You want an employee who is dynamic, who has knowledge, who comes in and makes decision, takes risk, is innovative, can actually catapult your organization from a particular level to a different level. Now, that's the nature of employment today. That's the nature of work today. And that kind of employee is not the employee who, if they spend 11 hours in office, it's a great thing to have. Because in 11 hours, you don't get the same level of dynamism. You don't get the same level of thought. You don't get the same level of dedication. So you want employees to be optimally at work, wherein they bring their whole to their whole talent, where you get the best results from them, you get their full dedication, and then they have time for themselves. So that to me is the overall objective of a leave policy in any organization in the current time. I mean, you can see in various countries now, people are coming up with, 4-day weeks, 4.5-day week, because the idea is that most people realize that productivity loss is not linked to absence from work. Productivity loss is actually linked to absence at work. You're at work, but you're not fully devoted. You are at work, but you're not actually giving your 100%. You're there physically, but not mentally. So therefore, leave to me is the most important part. And we are therefore looking towards, not only having leave being seen as, if I'm sick, I'll take leave. If I have a child or if I have to go to school or, various things like that. We're also looking towards facilitating people's life events. I mean, if you have a child, even if it is an adoptive child, you need to leave to bond with the child. Now, that is an understood need, and many organizations cater to that. Paternity. Now, we are a little behind on that, but you need paternity leave because it's not 4 days, 5 days. A lot of companies, I mean, universally, I think companies have about a week of leave, but a week of leave doesn't really give you the kind of time required. So organizations need to move in those directions. And there are various other things that people need to take time off so that they can come back to work, be more devoted to their company, do a better job of it. So that's the nature of leave. Can we attract people to our organization because of our leave policy? I believe we can. However, it is also true that leave doesn't become a conversation at the point of hiring. Most people, candidates, will not ask about leave policy because they fear being branded as somebody who's more interested in leave than work. So they'll not be selected, or they, so there is an embarrassment around asking that question. But if I'm as an organization want to go ahead, and if I have good policies as HR or as an organization, I would like to showcase that. Do I have good policies? And then I'd like to showcase. It would actually be something which could add value to the organizational brand and could attract people. We talked about, how to engage employees through the leave policy, etc., which is largely, if you give people the time they need to refresh themselves, to take care of their life, they come back to you with a better mindset. And that's what we need. We need people with a better mindset. When they come to work, they're fully there, not half there, half here, right? In terms of retention, again, it's half and half, because most people may not be able to focus that much on leave when they decide making a career decision to switch or not. There are other factors too, but it's definitely one of those things where an employee feels the pull. If they are engaged and if they're still looking at a change, and if the other company has worse leave policies, there will definitely be a certain resistance, and that's worth having. That, here I have advantages that I will not have there. I have been in organizations where there are good policies, where employees have made the decision to leave. And then after, very soon, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, they've come back and said, the work environment is terrible. You don't get leave. You don't have leave. I'd really like to come back. So it's important to, in all phases of managing your talent. One last thing before I hand over to you, Rashmi, I also want to point out, it's not only about having a leave policy. You can have the most beautifully written down leave policy, but it's about culture of accepting, acknowledging, and also encouraging people to take leave. Many an organization has the policy, but not the wherewithal. where because of work stress or whatever, the manager is likely to say no than yes, or at least frown upon leave. Becomes difficult for people to take leave. So if the culture is not accompanying the policy, then the policy is not worth much. So if we set a good policy, and if we give a culture which manages, encourages people in a reasonable manner, then it can become a significant part of our talent strategy. Rashmi, back to you.
Thank you so much, Maneesha. Yes, I definitely agree. I think thanks for bringing up the point that an idle leave policy facilitates a good work-life balance for your employees, which ensures that when they do come back to the work again, they are refreshed and motivated. That's the whole agenda, right? So yes, thank you so much. All right. So I'll just move to our next speaker. Ms. Suchandra, according to you, what are the common challenges in restructuring the leave policies and how can we overcome them?
Thank you, Rashmi. So just I think I will take the baton from Maneesha while she has set the context wonderfully what leave policies mean. And just will try to draw a difference between the erstwhile, the way leaves used to happen and what is happening to the way employees look at leaves in today's generations. Earlier, if you look at it, leaves used to be like sick leaves, casual leaves, or sick leaves and privileged leaves, earned leaves. And across organizations, there are like set government laws and norms, state-wise laws and norms, and companies will be following that. There used to be no other extra leave definitions that used to go into any of the organizations. There used to be maternity leave, and that's it, right? But if you look at what is happening today, is why companies have to keep on relooking at their leave policies, restructuring leave policies, is because dynamics have changed. The workforce nature has changed. The kind of the way that we are working has changed. And that in itself calls out that are we looking at the right set of leaves, right? One of the biggest challenges of restructuring leaves is, first of all, if an organization is say based in a particular state, and you are also spread across the rest of the other states in India, typically, you will have to follow the leave policies or as per the acts, the state acts and laws, right? Which kind of makes it very difficult. A similar example can be that you have feet on the street in each and every state. You will have to draft different state-wise regional holidays as well. So a company will end up having maybe all states, like 33 different state calendars. Most of the time, organizations try to bring in a commonality over there by making, say, these are mandatory leaves, these are floating leaves, which you can pick up from your calendars as in festival holidays and give it out, because the implementation part is what is difficult. I can write down a very good leave policy, but if I am not able to structure it, implement it, and track it basically with the team members, with the employees, then it is not effective at all. That's one of the biggest challenges that we face. The second challenge is to also cater to the diverse set of people that we have today in any organization, right? There are people who would not want a privilege leave. They don't take holidays or vacations as such. They will only take it for emergencies or other purposes. But there is a young generation who believes in the fact that, hey, if I have a 15 days of privilege leave, I might want to take all of them because I want to take a month off and go for trekking in the Himalayas, kind of a thing, right? Now, from a policy perspective, I am not kind of barring them from taking those leaves. From a business perspective, it becomes a challenge to implement it because business has a different say to it. They might want to kind of say, hey, I cannot have people go off at the same time. Like we are in the year end, right? A lot of companies by default take off the last week and give mandatory holidays because they know that business will be slow and hence people can take off, right? They have a lean period. But a lot of organizations cannot do that, whose business is impacted if too many people takes off at the year end. So very difficult for an organization to try and work on policies which will cater to everyone at the same manner. So What to keep in mind when we are restructuring policies is, who is my audience? What is the kind of policy we need? Are we able to be flexi with the policies and still keep in line with what the state law states? And also keep in mind with what is it now, the nature of work that people are doing. Most of the time now, we were having a discussion that, hey, it's work from home, right? So people are able to manage both their personal work and professional work at the same time without taking any off. Then what is happening with the leaves, right? They are still taking time off, but they're also putting in extra hours. Now, will organizations honor that? Will take into consideration and give them the leave encashment as per the desired bucket and everything? Or what happens to the leaves at the end of the day with the lapse? So again, it is a culture, as Maneesha ma'am was saying, that it's a culture of the organization, right? Are we putting in that culture in the organization that, hey, we have a leave policy, you can take it, it's built on trust factor. The leaves are for you to refresh yourself. Even you might be sitting at home, take the time off, shut up from all your gadgets and devices, spend time with your family, or spend time with doing some hobby that you like, right? And engage yourself, not always focus on work, because wellness has become an integral part of our life today. We need to focus on wellness, and leave policies, leave should also aim at employees focusing on their own self well-being. It's not only about taking vacations and holidays with family or anything anymore at this point in time. So leave policies, as we are restructuring, I'm today working on the next year leave policies when I'm looking at putting in some practices like marriage leaves. Like, we have a very young gen and we figured out everybody is getting married. They don't have enough leaves to cater to. Why as an organization can't I put, hey, you can take 5 days off for your marriage and everything? Wellness leaves, trying to put in some, apart from whatever leaves that you have, putting in some wellness leaves as well, so that people can take those focused wellness leaves and not be working at simultaneously. Most often we have seen people take leave because the leaves are lapsing, but they're still simultaneously working because of the work pressure. We don't want people to get into that zone. We want the leaves to go in and happen in such a way that, hey, you are on your vacation or you are taking off. It should be time for you to unwind, distress, and go on. And one more challenge that we have is when we are looking at a couple of the leaves that we have, like sick leaves, we have a policy, like most of the organizations, that you cannot take more than 2 sick leaves at a time simultaneously. Or, you cannot have leaves like continuous. A lot of organizations say if you leaves fall on a weekend or so. How do people understand that, right? Do they understand the difference between a continuous leave or just only the working days leaves? So when we are doing those kind of restructuring, or we're changing the jargon of the leave messaging, the implementation and the messaging to the employee should also be very clear about it, so that they understand the benefits of how a change, if an organization has been giving defaulting them on a continuous leave policies and making it only work days or work weeks, how the benefit happens for them. So employees need to be, we need to be more transparent and communicative about it. Nobody asks, as Maneesha ma'am was saying, nobody comes and asks you about leave policies. I have most often heard people asking me like, hey, what is the number of leaves that I am getting? And how can I go ahead and take it? As simple as that. Nobody understands the cadence of what is the importance of the leaves that is being given to you. So what we are at it of restructuring and making our leave policies better for the employees, for our team members, we should also be able to communicate it to them and show it out to them transparently, how you can go ahead and better utilize it. So I would leave it to you now, Rashmi. Is there anything else that anybody can add to it? I'm sure Maneesha ma'am can add a lot to this point as well.
Sure, Suchandra. Thank you so much. I think, like we already mentioned, it's very much true that one size does not fit all, right? So a leave policy is not just about granting the leaves or the number of leaves, but also the assurance that you will provide your employees with the essential time off to take care of any issues that they have, or could be like you mentioned, take time off to your vacation or recover from your illness, celebrate the festivals, deal with life. So I think all of this is the objective around your leave policy. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, Suchandra. I think our audience will definitely be benefited out of this. So I'll just move on to our next question. So Ms. Soyirindhi, my next question to you. Can you please share a few interesting case studies or innovative leave policies that SMEs can adopt?
Yeah, firstly, thanks, Rashmi. And uh, I was hearing whatever Maneesha and Suchandra both have spoken, and there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight that I also gathered from what both of them spoke. And considering the fact that definitely structuring a leave policy was is very different today than what it was a few years ago. And I think the main reason for that is, as you know, in the industry, I think right now everybody is talking about the future of work, and the future of work definitely compels organizations to think differently, to think innovatively, because obviously the pandemic has definitely changed the way in which various HR policies need to be aligned and probably relooked at, be it with respect to, you know, any engagement initiatives, even compensation packages, uh, by and large, you know, deciding how do you handle a workforce which is remote in nature. So there is definitely a huge cultural shift which companies in India were not fully prepared for. I mean, you know, the whole concept of telecommuting and working from home is an alien concept. I mean, probably we would see that happening in certain organizations once or twice a week, or, you know, once a or, you know, some certain times of the month. But to be completely remote, and the whole pandemic has thrown all of us in that kind of a scenario. So even though today the world is trying to get back to normalcy, we have to admit that there is a lot of change, a lot of transformation happening at our workplaces. It has resulted in organizations to think differently and think more for employees' welfare. So I believe there is a huge focus today on how to be seen as an enterprise that cares for its people. You know, so I think today, more than maybe a competitive salary package, it's about what kind of policies are you building up that shows that you know, you are empathetic to your teams. You have your leaders. The leaders are being trained on you know, on mindfulness and how to be more conscious of the needs of their team members. You know, because like it was mentioned earlier, that there are different sections of the workforce today, different kinds of needs which have come up, you know, with children being at home and schools not having opened up. So and both the parents working, you know, so again it puts a different kind of pressure. Sometimes there are sick parents at home, and, you know, some of our employees are managing ailing parents. They have to juggle multiple duties. So through all this, the need to look at innovative leave policies which caters to everybody, you know, definitely increases. And if I were to just you know, highlight a few things which I have heard about in the industry, and I know of organizations which do such things, just some high level examples. So I know of companies which decided to, you know, probably do a happy weekend offer kind of a thing. So where you just give off you know, one Friday of a month, and you give off an extended weekend to your people, just out of the blue. It just has to be a kind of thing, you know, on a monthly basis, like a weekend offer. Also, I think there was a mention on, you know, different kinds of family leave. So the concepts like family leave, where you give certain maybe 12 to 16 weeks of paid leave given to employees, or given to people who need to care for an ailing family member. And it may not necessarily be about you know, something to do with the employee, but supposing somebody in the employee's family is not keeping well, like a dependent, so giving that time off to that person to take care of the family. um, Also, I think one of the most wonderful things that I've heard recently was about this whole concept of leave pooling. Okay, so I think this is something which is I think earlier people were doing it, but with the whole you know, how the whole situation has evolved over the past 2 years, by leave pooling has become a very I would say heartening concept, because collaboration is what is at the heart of such a policy. And what happens in this is that employees actually get together and share their accumulated leaves with those who need it. So I think this concept is very unique and also greatly promotes the spirit of oneness, because people will always remember a colleague or a manager who, imagine giving up their leaves for you so that you could take an extended uh, period of time, and you didn't really have to get into a loss of pay situation or lose your salary. And so definitely that, if somebody does something like that for you, you wouldn't want to leave a place like that. Retention then becomes easier because you build those kind of connections, and you build that the links that links or connections to that company or to the organization becomes more stronger. Apart from this, I think the other things would be around the gender neutral parental leave. So now I think many organizations do not just say that it's only a mother who's necessarily going to take a maternity leave. Now even fathers are being recognized, the male members. So this is again keeping in mind how a company wants to focus on gender diversity. There are concepts of foster parents. Even if you adopt a child, you get that adoptive leave policy for a period of 12 to 16 weeks, depending on what works for the organization. So uh, again, another very important thing is about the vaccination leave. So I know there are organizations which sort of gave us a vaccination leave policy where you can take a day off from the company. To recuperate from the vaccine. So light leaves, it's simply about taking your time off, and organizations want to give more flexibility to employees to sort of choose what they want to do with their time. And sometimes there is a fixed amount of time given in some companies where you just take that time to travel, or to take some personal time off, or to go on a retreat, or go for a hike, etc. So uh, I think there's just more openness to the fact that people need that kind of flexibility, and when they have that kind of flexibility, they are more engaged and more productive and more likely to stay with the organization. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to just share from my side. And yeah, I think it'll be great to hear what other people are doing, and what are the different kinds of ways in which different organizations are setting up their leaves for the next few years. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Soyirindhi. I think listening to this just reminds me of one line. It's a very popular line, that is, all work and no play makes a Jack or Jill a dull boy or a girl. So I think in today's generation, it's very much important, because all of us dream of having this perfect work-life balance, right? Because we need that break from work from time to time. And it is extremely essential as well for the overall well-being of the employees, I guess, because it promotes the good physical health, mental health, and I think there are infinite benefits out of this. So thank you for sharing your insights, Soyirindhi. I think our audience would definitely relate to all of this. So with this, we are done with the first part of our session, that is the
Can I
discussion.
just add one thing to this?
Sure, Maneesha, please
We've
go ahead.
all been talking about, leave as an entitlement, as why employees need leave, etc. I think one aspect which the organizationally we need to also take care is how do we plan, because it's not simple. Like we discussed, leave means absence of a person. Now, as if you are an organization which is working at optimal strength, you do not have people's replacing. You don't have spare, resources. So, and it can't be built also, skill sets and cost, everything. So the issue here is that, as an organization, how much effort do we take to plan this? Because just wanting it, just being trusting, having, thinking about it in a very generous manner doesn't help. That generosity then has to be put into very practical orientation and say, okay, at the beginning of the year, everybody has to chalk the leave calendar and say, when will you take your leave? How many times you can take leave? We have to do a lot of hard work in terms of creating a managerial responsibility as to when people go on leave, so that all leave is not taken at the end of the leave year, which is either, November, December, or February, March. And then people saying, oh, I didn't get leave because, my manager refused. But manager is unlikely to grant leave to the whole team in the last 2 months. So somewhere that aspect is also very important, that and maybe a planning tool. Whether if there is a planning tool, then to say that, this is the plan, this is what people will take, and to follow it to some extent. Yeah.
Sure, very much valid, Maneesha. Thank you for sharing it. So I think we can now go to the audience. So dear attendees, we are now open for your Q&A. So please start putting across your questions in the Q&A option that you can see on the Zoom control panel. And we would like to take up as many questions as possible in our today's session. So I can already see few questions lined up for us here in the queue. So let me just take it up one by one. So one of the questions is from Rima. Hi, Rima. So Rima's question is, since we are having continuous work from home, it has been observed people are managing personal and professional work without taking leave. So companies used to give encashment when offices were open, but now business is reluctant to do that, assuming misuse of the policy. What should be the HR approach so that both employees and business are happy? So Maneesha, your take on this.
So we discussed this earlier, Rashmi. I have faced this, and the solutions will be varied for different companies. So, and a couple of questions I noticed later have asked this, so I'll just briefly say this. Encashment of leave is not there in every state. It's not mandated in the shops and establishment of every state, but there are a couple of states where encashment is also mandated. So every company needs to check which states they are present in and what is the rules. Many people have been asking, if I'm in multiple states, then how do I manage and stuff. Now, the thing is that it is complicated, and we have to look at, we have to map the shops and establishment policy on leave for each of these states and have a look at it. Ideally, the general direction would be that, if you are generous, that's always better. But it can also be that sometimes, I remember one of the Northeast states had some fairly wacky leave policy. The number of days were really, really high. So somewhere finding a reasonable leave amount. I do not know of any company which follows state-wise leave policies. So normally we have leave policies for the whole country company, and that's what we follow. We try to fit in within the laws as far as possible. So for that, we have to look at the shops and establishment and arrive at a passable kind of norm. So that's the way to do it. Some states have encashment mandated, but most don't. So encashment for a minute, let me say that encashment is something which the organization has as per its policy, and it's been there in India. Personally, I feel that, we lose out when we equate leave with encashment, because that is basically leave becoming money. And then leave utilization also goes down, because ultimately, it's money. So people won't take leave and they will just encash it, and therefore it becomes like an increase. It's a salary. It's no longer leave. So ideally for an organization, not even because of the payout, but just because you want people to take this time out and to invest in themselves and their families and live a slightly richer life, full encashment is something that I, as an HR person, do not recommend in any organization. So that's irrespective of the pandemic, that use your leave. Don't keep it so that you can get some more money. Now, as far as this particular situation is concerned during the pandemic, completely agree that now the need to take leave really, really fell. And the utilization, like I had done, a comparison between the last year and the pandemic year, had fallen by about 90%. People didn't need to take leave. There were no occasions to take leave, etc. It's crawling back up. But I think the idea would be, one of the things which even earlier than pandemic people were using is, you have to take a certain minimum number of leaves. So if you have, let's say, a 30-day leave policy, you'd say at least 15 days or 20 days must be utilized. So 20 may be too many, but let's say 15 days of leave must be utilized. If you don't utilize, in any case, they will lapse. So then you restrict your encashment to 15 days. That's one way of handling it. The other thing is, Like in 2021, for example, which was the hardest hit in terms of this particular problem, suspend your encashment for a particular year because you've done a lot of changes because of the pandemic. I mean, organizations which were never working from home, work from home. You also gave work from home to employees which couldn't really work from home. But it would be extremely cruel to, I mean, in a lockdown, what would you do? Your employee. So many organizations also set off their leaves against some of those absences, but nobody could cover all their, all their stay-at-home days with a leave policy. So organizations have been generous in other areas. They could, for one particular year or for a certain period, say, okay, we're just suspending it for this year. HR should be able to communicate to employees that in the changed circumstances, this is it. It's a temporary thing, not forever, and it will be taken care of later. So, in my experience, employees were open to, understanding and accepting it because they saw that the organization has reached out in many other ways. So leave encashment, even if you suspend it for a year, it didn't really matter. But on the other hand, you can limit leave encashment, and that also helps you on a perpetuity that people have to take a certain number of leave, only a certain can be encashed. Gradually, I think leave encashment should anyway be phased out. I mean, it's something that, you build, it's a liability that you build in the future. Leave encashment is very tough and difficult because you have to keep doing actuarial valuation. You pay at the time when the person leaves the salary, not on the salary earned in that particular year. So leave encashment is a fairly technical and difficult thing, and it takes away the value of time off. It becomes money. So in my view, leave encashment is something that organizations should not really be doing. But that's my view. Sorry.
So yes, Maneesha, I just wanted to kind of understand from you, can any organization circumvent the state laws? Because a lot of the states, like even in Karnataka, we have that mandate, like, there is a carry forward leave. So is it mandated or we can forego it also?
You can always have a basket of leave, a certain number that there also a maximum is fixed, but it doesn't have to be encashable. That leave will always lie in your bucket for an eventuality. I mean, I break my leg and cannot work for 2 months. I have 60 days of leave. I can take leave. So you can still have accumulation, but not encashment.
Okay. So you can say we can keep on carry forwarding the leaves as per, because the law talks about carry forward and not encashment per se. Yeah. So the carry forward leaves may be like if a person is an organization for a longer duration, say joined in early and then after 4 years gets married and needs 2 months off. So the bucket of carry forward leaves that you would have accumulated can go towards that.
Absolutely.
And I think that might have answered a lot of queries that people have, because people usually confuse carry forward to encashment as such.
And the other thing that just wanted to add here is also, I think the carry forward is also some of the states, in fact, I know Karnataka does have a limit of the carryover, so you can carry over 45 days. So again, that again restricts people from, they are actually compelled to take leaves through the year. So like you rightly pointed out, Maneesha, that they have to be asked to take leaves, and leave should not be looked at just as an encashment option. So I think one of the ways in which some companies also do it is that they say encashment is only at the time of separation. So only when you leave is when you get your things. Otherwise, every year that you're there, there's only a particular bucket of leaves which you can carry over, which is based on the state acts and things like that. So I think that also may work in certain scenarios.
So,
sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. So I think, Rima, that pretty much answers your question. And dear speakers, since we were already talking about different states and the state-wise policies, one of our attendee, Ms. Payal, has a question for us. So Payal's question is, from where we can get the information about state-wise leave policy laws? If a company is having 2 or 3 branches in different states, then how do we decide on the leave policy? Are the policies different for different branches? Can we do that?
Well, the policy for the states are different. Shops and Establishment Act is different. So you have to basically put all of it together. And like I said earlier, you find what is, what covers all the states. I don't know of any organization where different employees in different states get different leave policy. I don't think anybody does that. So you find something which works.
Sure. Suchandra, would you like to add anything here?
No, I think Maneesha has been talking about this from the beginning of the conversation, that as an wherever, if you have a audience across India, your team members, find what is mutually acceptable within the boundaries of the law. So it can mean that you are being generous to certain states, right? Giving more than that. Generosity is not harmful over here, to be very honest. But then you cannot say that, hey, if an organization or in a particular state it's 45 days carry forward, then that upper limit gets applicable to all of the organization. So that's how you need to kind of devise it when you are structuring your rules. So basically take all of them, put whatever is the highest ones in your sheet, and take that as your leave policy and put it into place. Is, I think, as simple as that is what I will say.
Yeah, technically that would be correct.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. So I think, Payal, that answers most of your questions. And Soyirindhi,
I think somebody asked, right, where will we get this policy? So you can go into each and every shop and establishment, and Google will be your best friend. You will have everything over there. Even we as an HRs also go there and find the shop and establishment act of each and every state and look at those policies. Some of the HR websites also club them together and put it as a knowledge bank. You can look through those updated ones and get your all the information.
Sure. Thank you so much, Suchandra. So I'm sure Payal will definitely be benefited out of this. And Soyirindhi, the question is for you, since we were already talking about different types of leaves and the purpose behind it and all of that. One of our attendees, Mr. Harish, has this question for us. So how many maximum leaves to be granted to employees like sick leave, casual leave, and earned leave?
Okay, so again, I think this question is, it roots back to what Suchandra and Maneesha both were talking about. In fact, just now we spoke that every state has an SNE Act. So again, sick leaves, casual leaves, earned leaves are again regulated state-wise. So again, what anybody would need to do is simply just look at what is, go through all this, whichever states your office is located in, look at what works for that particular state, and then just do a maximum, like in the sense, look at what is the best approach. So for example, if certain states, I mean, again, like Suchandra just mentioned about generosity not being, you shouldn't, it works like, so in the sense, if someone's getting more, like a particular state where they're where they say you can have unlimited sick leaves, whereas the other state says that there is no, you can't have unlimited sick leaves, we give only 12 days of casual leave. So in such a situation, what can you do? So maybe the organization can then decide on whether they want to keep it uniform, that is given unlimited sick leave completely, like to everybody, and not differentiate. So it's again what the one size fits all approach, but again the fact that look at what is best amongst all those options. So I think that's what will work.
And also to add to Soyirindhi, the whole classification of PL, EL, SL and CL and all of that, while the shops and establishment does talk in that language, it's completely okay in my view to, if you keep the numbers, to be able to put it all together and have one category of leave called all-purpose leave or something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be 10 days of sick leave and 10 days of CL and 10 days of PL. That differentiation is absolutely, I don't think, required, so long as you are taking care of the overall number.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much. And Maneesha, since you're already talking about the Shops and Commercial Establishment Act, I think one of our attendees, Mr. Satish, has a question around that. So Satish's question is, based on the Shops and Commercial Establishment notification, we can have the leave granted to our employees, let's say for Karnataka state, is for 45 days. So can I restrict leave encashment to 30 days as per company policy?
I think Suchandra would be able to say this. I cannot recall what is the Karnataka upper limit, but if it is 45 days, then they can keep it to 45 days. But 45 days
there
is
is
the upper limit. So
And
if you have 30 days, it's your internal policy. How many you, so if an employee doesn't take a single day of leave, can they take forward all 30? The company has to decide. And if they do that in the next year, they will run out of, 45 will be the cap. After that, they will not be able to accumulate anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
But how much you want to let them accumulate in a particular year is the choice of the company.
Yeah, I think the question was also in terms of the leave encashment. Again, coming back to the question, fact that carry forward and encashment are different. Carry forward is as per your SNEs. Encashment is left to an organization's choice, whether you are going to give it as an leave encashment or not. So, for example, we are in Karnataka. I have a policy of 30 days maximum carried forward. That can go into it, right? And if an employee's buckets overflows in the second year, if they have not taken leaves after 30, then third year leave of whatever 15 PS will lapse if they don't take it, but it's not gets encashed. Encashment happens as per our policy only when they're leaving the organization. As Ms. Maneesha was saying, that you can always avoid encashment also. I may not want to give an encashment, right? I'm keeping this as a buffer for an employee when they're leaving, when in terms of duress or any emergency, you can take the whole set of leaves. For example, a simple example is like a maternity leave, right? After maternity leaves get exhausted also, employees want to take extended holidays and leaves, right? Extended leave for parenting purposes. So in this certain scenarios, this carry forward leave buckets becomes useful. Even for paternity leaves also, this becomes useful.
sure. Soyirindhi, would you like to add something here?
I think I'm good. The only bit is again about like both Maneesha and Suchandra have rightly pointed out that it's about achieving that balance, like what works, and between what how much you can carry over and how much you can encash. There's always that debate which will constantly happen. There's never any hard and fast rule, and every organization functions differently based on probably the business scenario, what works for them, what kind of again the workforce, that the kind of people who are there, like in the sense, if you are if you're in an organization which is very sales driven and there are a lot of numbers and hard hitting deadlines which people have to achieve, so again, the way in which you would want to look at a carryover and look at an encashment would be different vis-a-vis a company which is probably more at IT services. So I'm saying it's again it's not a one size thing which it's not, it's multiple things and multiple ways in which you can look at these kind of scenarios. But the government doesn't really put any restriction that this is what you have to follow, and this is what you have, this is how much you have to carry over, or even encashment right now I think is only with Telangana state. The Telangana state says there's a mandatory 8 days of encashment. Other states do not have that. So, again, it can vary next year. We don't know, but yeah, we just have to wait and watch. Yeah.
True, very true. Thank you so much, Soyirindhi. And Maneesha, we have our attendee Tejaswini who would like to hear more about leave pulling, the concept of leave pulling. So if you could just enlighten us, would be great.
I'm sorry, I am absolutely clueless about leaf pulling. What is leaf pulling?
I think no, I think they've written it wrongly. I think it came from what I was speaking about. It's not leaf pulling. It was leaf pulling.
Oh, leaf pulling. Okay. Sorry. So that's spelling error.
Yeah, it's a spelling error.
The leaf pulling is simple in concept. It says that every employee has an X number of leave, and if they don't need it, they're not going to utilize it. You create some kind of a pool of those leaves, and if somebody else needs it, and over and above the number of leaves they have, they would be able to take that leave which is not theirs. So let's say if they have 30 days and they've already taken 30 days, they had some COVID problem, something, and then they actually have to be absent for 45 days. So the department or the organization and the pools will differ from place to place. So if there is a leave pool and other people have pooled in 10 days, and there is leave pooling there, this person is allowed to take it. That's basically the concept. that in case of emergencies, you are able to take some leave from a leave pool which other people have donated. So much like money and everything, you're donating leaves to a leave. So that's
right.
basically.
And in a lot of organizations, this donation also translates into money as well. When some organizations wants to raise some funds for someone, so instead of asking for money, they say, "Hey, how many privileges leaves of yours you would want to donate?" And that amount equivalent is put into as a fund for some of the exigencies. Like it can be a medical reason, it can be for a treatment purposes. Insurance has is not going to cover an exigency for any employee. So this also helps in terms of covering any employee in dire need as well. So it's like a gratitude way of your leaves that can get utilized in any organization. So there are various different ways that organizations can think of using leaves, donation of leaves for the betterment of all the people.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think Tejaswini, that clarifies your question. And we have another interesting question here. It is from one of our attendees who is very much curious to know about the sandwich rules. So the question is, could you please explain about sandwich rules and its legality under labor laws?
If I may just start off, and Suchandra and Soyirindhi can add to that. I guess sandwich leave is basically that if there are holidays in between, they get counted as leaves. Now, as far as shops and establishment is concerned, it's all continuous. So if you take Friday and Monday off, it's 4 days of leave. That's what shops and establishment allows you to do that. So that is sandwich leave, and therefore people then have to avoid, taking a Friday and a Monday and stuff like that. I think it's a little bit outdated, and most organizations have given up on that. Now we usually work on working days because we don't want employees to struggle with scheduling. That, if I have 3 days here and 2 days here, then I'll take 2 days. But if I take 1 day more, we want people to be free with using their leaves. So every day of absence is 1 day of leave, and that's all there is. If there's a holiday, it's a holiday. So working days is what I think the world at large has moved towards. There is, of course, from the past, we have inherited this whole thing about continuous days. So some organizations may have the legacy leave rules, but when and if any company is reviewing their leave rules, they must definitely consider this, because a lot of effort is wasted on planning to take leave, utilizing the leave better, and absolutely no requirement for that. I see no advantage. So if that answers the question.
Sure. Yeah. So we have another interesting question, and the most commonly asked question. It is from our attendee Tejaswi. So the question is, how much paternity leave can be given to male employees?
Go ahead.
So Suchandra, your take on this?
Okay, there is no rule as such as of now about paternity leaves. Companies are free to decide how much of paternity leaves to give. A lot of new age organizations are coming up with paternity leaves equivalent to maternity leaves as well. We can define it in various different ways because we are looking, since we talk about equality, we are talking about diversity, responsibilities. So most of the current organizations are looking at, say, 45 days to 2 months at least of paternity leaves. But they can be taken like in a 6 months period, similarly like a maternity leave itself. So organizations are free to devise, pull out these rules, and there's a great benefit that you can give. If an organization gives paternity leaves the same as maternity leaves, then I think a lot of people will start looking at it as a best place to work. So it's a branding exercise also for a lot of companies. It's a retention policy. It's a hiring, recruitment, attraction policy as well.
So, all right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Suchandra. I think that helps our attendee here. And since we are already talking about paternity leave, it leads to another question, which is on maternity leave now. So it is from Paurnima. Hi, Purnima. Purnima's question is, we follow a government rolled out maternity leave policy of 26 weeks of paid leaves. So one of the situation I faced in my IT industry tenure is that a few candidates join the company for 2 to 3 months and then apply for the maternity leave. Since it's government rolled out policy as in business perspective, does company can bend the policy based on the cases, like case to case basis? Can you please suggest the solution for this? So,
So
Soyirindhi,
Rashmi,
yes,
can I
sure.
just say
Yes,
something
yes,
on this?
please.
See, the thing here is that, I mean, from what I'm getting it, it seems like a planned kind of thing that, if I join and if we're meeting candidates personally and all, I'm not sure how we can hire candidates who are 2-3 months away from delivery without noticing that they're but anyway, let's consider that that happens and a person does join in. First of all, if a person is delivering, there's not much you can do. The person is going to deliver and therefore they need the leave physically, right? Now they become eligible for maternity leave only after 240 days or something of working. So technically you could say no, but in reality, how will you say no? So, I mean, the only things that I can think of is you would say, okay, we are granting you this. However, you need to work in this organization for 2 years. Else, so you take some kind of a retention clause from them saying that you're not eligible for maternity leave. However, we are granting you maternity leave, but you need to, minimum work for this much, right? So at least they'll come back and they'll work for some time. Maybe they'll fulfill the 8 months requirement or 1 year or whatever. So some kind of a retention clause could be attached to this, and failing which they may have to take leave or pay back the amount, which would be really messy. But I think from a trust factor, until unless you're quite sure that you're going taken for a ride, it's not something that you would fight, because there is a person, they are having a baby, they need this time off. We should treat it gracefully as far as possible.
Sure. Yeah. So, Soyirindhi, would you like to add anything here?
No, I absolutely agree with Maneesha. So again, it's that concept of trust. One is definitely that, and also the concept of being empathetic. Like, what do you do really if a situation like that comes up, and there is a female employee who has to take up that thing? And in those kind of situations, definitely we do have a clause of that minimum period of time that you would have to spend. And so the rule is already there, the law is there. But if you're faced with this kind of a situation, at the most, if, like Maneesha said, if you're absolutely sure that that it's a genuine case, and you really also, if you want to show yourself as an employer, more from a empathetic scenario and more from coming from that standpoint, I think we'll have to figure out a midway somewhere. We can't say no completely, because that would be inhuman. So yeah, I think what works, again, it's a kind of a I think more from the employee standpoint, it's more of they do understand, they have to understand that it is something which the organization is doing as a means of going out of their way, or like an obligation point kind of a thing. So that's something which the employee would also have to understand.
Just to add a point here, because as Maneesha pointed out, like this will not go unnoticed. So there might be a condition to hiring as well, because a person that has been hired is extremely skilled, is much needed, and the organization has hired knowing it. So it's an agreed contract. So need to understand those backgrounds, right? Mostly in my experiences, managers will be reluctant to do this hire, knowing that this person is going to go off in another 2 or 3 months after joining on a long maternity leave, right? So, and that's the mindset and mind in India especially. I will just say it doesn't happen abroad or any other countries, because they have a very different set of rules when it comes to your leave policies or any of this kind of a situation. So if that is a situation, then the organization has to honor it as well, despite whatever the law says. Yeah,
let's
sorry,
not
Maneesha.
look at it in terms of, it's not a big problem. I hope that
Yes.
Purnima is not having a big problem with this, because anyway we have diversity issues.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
hiring people, women in workplace is a stress. Retaining them, there is
is
so
a
much
stress.
against the whole diversity phenomena, that some of these things we need to treat it with generosity as something that we need to do. It's something we need. Oh, and maybe once in a while somebody will take advantage of it, but that does not mean that we should have policies which are punitive in nature. So I think we should look at it from slightly broader perspective.
Okay. I think I got someone saying this maternity cases are happening during this work from home period where we are actually physically
Not
not able to
meeting.
see them, which
Yeah.
means that, which also means that some amount of information has been hidden from the organization while they are onboarding it.
But Suchandra,
And
no, we have asked, no? See,
yeah,
we don't also ask anybody that are you, pregnant,
no,
or
We
no,
don't
it is
ask.
it is it is not about that, but I think it is more about the trust building that organizations and employees should have. So it boils down to that factor.
I think what
Absolutely.
essentially trying to say is, does a candidate openly share? I mean, as today, if I am interviewing
Hmm.
for a place and I know that in the next 2-3 months I would be looking at a maternity, so am I being upfront and honest with the organization? So I think that bit really counts, and that goes a long
Yes.
way in me building a association with the organization. Later on,
Hmm.
what the company does or does not do is a different thing, but
Yes.
how honest and upfront is the candidate?
Yes.
Very much value. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And dear participants, due to interest of time, we may not be able to take up all of your questions, but we are trying our best. And since I have already eaten up your 9 minutes now, I would like to take up one last question for today and then wind up the session. So the last question of today's session is from Divya. Hi Divya. Divya's question is, should leave policies be different from for work from home and work from office? So Maneesha, your take on this?
Um, in a hybrid workplace where some people are working from home and some people are working from office, I would say no, because the nature of work and the responsibility given, the organization has decided that somebody can work from home and somebody can work from office. And also, if they are dividing their time, they're saying, part of the time they are going to be in office, part of the time they're going to be at home, then the leave policies don't need to be different. Only in, I mean, for example, during lockdown, 100% work from home, and I don't know any organization which can do it. In those cases, you could look towards tweaking your leave policy if the organization is going completely work from home. But other than that, I wouldn't consider a differential policy, because I don't believe that work from home is a benefit. It's not a, you're not doing a favor. It's not a benefit. It is the nature of the work. You've decided that it's an optimal way of working. You're productive, you work from home, organization incurs less cost. So keeping all that in mind, it's not something that I would take into consideration for changing the leave policy. That's my view.
Sure. So I hope that answers the question. So I think it's now time to end the session. But before that, for those of you whose questions are not answered, please don't be disappointed. You can always reach out to us with our questions on our community forum called Great Tribe. So Great Tribe is an initiative from greytHR. It's basically a Q&A forum where a lot of knowledge sharing happens among the HR fraternity. And just like our today's experts in the session, we also have an expert panel there over the Great Tribe, and the link is already given here. You can always post your questions and seek your answers there. All right. So please do sign up for this and take the advantage of it. And I think it's now time to end the session. But before that, I think what I can say with our discussion today is we have to remember that a well-structured leave policy is also a tool to communicate the company's values and expectations. So leave policy is not just about granting leaves, it is about helping employees to know about their entitlements and to make it easy for employees to avail them effectively. So the ultimate measure of a good leave policy, I can say, is the outcome it produces. It could be happy and engaged employees who have decent work-life balance. So on this note, I would like to end our today's session. And before that, I would like to thank our esteemed speakers for taking out time out of their busy schedule and for making it for the session today. Thank you so much, Maneesha, Ms. Suchandra, and Soyirindhi. And I'm sure the discussions done, the points shared, and the insights shared, our attendees have definitely found it informative and helpful. And we'll be looking forward to see you in our upcoming sessions. And dear attendees, thanks for your presence here. And we'll also be looking forward to see you in our next Parichay sessions. And yes, the recording will be shared with all of you. Do not worry about it. So on this note, thank you again. Stay safe. Take care. Have a great time.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thanks, Rashmi. Thanks, Sharmishra. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.